Hey guys, Luke on Sean's channel. Today I'm going to be showcasing my new and improved Cyber Dragon deck profile. This is not a competitive deck that I bring to locals or anything like that, it's just for a bit of fun. This is like a good skeleton to use for all Cyber Dragon decks, so I definitely recommend you guys checking out the full deck to see what kind of ratios I run, and just leave some suggestions or open up to some of the suggestions I make as well. So let's just not beat around the bush, let's get straight into the Cyber Dragon deck profile. I mean, fairly obvious, we are running 3 copies of Cyber Dragon. Cyber Dragon is such a nostalgic card for myself, as I'm sure it is for a lot of you too. Of course we're rocking the OG art, because in my opinion that is the superior art. Cyber Dragon can special himself out if you control no monsters and your opponent controls a monster. Great level 5, 2100 attack machine monster. Cyber Dragon is the GOAT of this deck. Speaking of GOATs, Core, one of my favorite starters across any deck, because Core is a mandatory effect on summon. When this card is normal summoned, you add 1 Cyber Spell Trap from your deck to your hand. And also Core has a secondary effect. If he's in the graveyard and you control no monsters and your opponent does control a monster, you can actually banish Core from your graveyard and special summon any Cyber Dragon monster from your deck, which can be very, very good. So 3 copies of Core, he's a great starter, a great recovery, 3 copies of him, very essential. 3 copies of Cyber Dragon Herz. What I really like about Cyber Dragon Herz is that he has 2 effects. Unfortunately, you can't activate both of them in the same turn, but still, it doesn't really matter. Herz has the effect, if he's sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 Cyber Dragon from your deck or graveyard to your hand. And one cool thing about that effect is the fact that all of your Cyber Dragon monsters, their name are Cyber Dragon while it's in the graveyard. So say if you have Core already in the graveyard and you send Herz to the grave, you can actually add that Core back to your hand to get some recovery from there. Herz also has a secondary effect, is that if this card is special summoned, it becomes level 5 for the rest of the turn. Herz is definitely essential to run a 3 in this build. I run 2 copies of Cyber Dragon Nachster. I really like Nachster because he's very good. If you open him and Cyber Dragon in your hand, it's absolutely great, because Nachster's effect is you can discard 1 other monster, special summon this card from your hand. And if this card is no more special summon, you can target 1 machine monster with 2100 attack or defense in your graveyard and special summon it. So if you use Nachster and if you pitch a Cyber Dragon from your hand and then bring out Nachster, you can actually bring out that Cyber Dragon that you pitched. So Nachster is very, very good. If you use this effect, you're locked into your machine monsters for the rest of the turn. But we don't really run too many monsters that aren't machine in this build, so you don't really worry about that too often. So 2 copies of Nachster is very, very good for this build. And finally doing it, I'm running the Cyberdark Chimera package. Cyberdark Chimera, I kind of underestimated a little bit. I will admit I was wrong. He is actually pretty good. The only downside I don't like is the fact that you have to discard 1 spell or trap from your hand to add a power bond. It's not just a discard and add power bond, or even better, just straight up add power bond. So what he does is you can discard 1 spell or trap, add 1 power bond from your deck to your hand. He also has an effect that if you're fusion summoning this turn, you can also banish monsters that are in your graveyard as material as well. So Cyberdark Chimera is very, very good because it searches power bond, and it can pretty much overload fusion power bond depending on what your graveyard status is like at that time in the game. So 1 copy of Chimera is very, very good. You can search him off of the Cyberdark spell we run in the deck, which can also be searched off of Core. So it's very, very good, very easy to get Chimera to your hand. Only 1 copy of it is more than enough. Now the first honorary Cyber Dragon card, of course, is Galaxy Soldier. Galaxy Soldier is great because him and Herz are a 2-card combo to go straight into your infinity. What I really like about Galaxy Soldier is the fact that he's very easy to get into the XZ side of this deck, which we only have a small XZ package, but of course it's still a very strong one, being the Cyber Dragon Infinity XZ package. Which arguably is better than the fusion side of this deck, but that's open to interpretation. Galaxy Soldier is you can send 1 light monster from your hand to the graveyard and special summon this card from your hand in defense position. And when this card is special summoned, you can add 1 Galaxy monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Galaxy Soldier once per turn. But Galaxy Soldier, if you use this effect to bring him out, you can search the other Galaxy Soldier in your deck and add to your hand, and you can just activate that effect again. 2 level 5 machine monsters on the field, XZs into Nova effect, you go into infinity. it's just really great to get into our XZ side of the deck. Galaxy Soldier is definitely an honorary Cyber Dragon card. Speaking of honorary Cyber Dragon cards, one copy of Jizukiru to start destroying Kaiju. He's just a great machine Kaiju. If we're trapped into only summoning machine monsters off a Nachster effect, we don't really mind Kaijuing a big machine monster like this. We also run Chimeratech Forces Dragon in the extra deck, so even if we do get rid of a problematic monster that your opponent has for a big machine boy like him, we can easily contact fusion him off. So one copy of Jizukiru. He can also be searched off of Cyber Repair Plant as well, so only one copy is more than enough. Rounding off the monsters, we run 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is just the most universal hand trap in the game, so 3 copies of it is of course very, very good. Moving along into the spells now, we run 3 copies of Cyber Emergency. This is the searcher of the deck. It just adds a Cyber Dragon monster from your deck to your hand. It also has a secondary effect that I never really take advantage of, just because it kind of like never really comes up. It's also the fact that if this card in its owner possession was negated by your opponent's card effect, you can and sent to the graveyard, you can discard 1 card and add this card to your hand, which is good if it gets interrupted and you really need that Cyber Emergency for setup next turn. But you know, most likely your opponent isn't going to interrupt Cyber Emergency unless it's like late in the game state and you're down to minimal resources. But 3 copies of Cyber Emergency is definitely very, very good. 1 copy of Cyber Repair Plant. Cyber Repair Plant is very good. If Cyber Dragon's in your graveyard, you can activate one of these effects, but if there's 3 or more Cyber Dragons in your graveyard, you can activate both the effects. One being add 1 light machine monster from your deck to your hand, being you can search any of your light machine monsters, so that includes your Galaxy Soldiers and your Kaiju. And then also secondary effect, you can target 1 light machine monster in your graveyard and shove that target into the deck. I kind of wish you got an extra bit of draw power off of this as well, because, you know, just take this deck a little bit further beyond. You're definitely running more than 1 copy of it if that was the case, but only 1 copy is perfectly fine for this card right here. 1 copy of Cyber Revsystem, the Monster Reborn, searchable Monster Reborn might I add for this deck. It just says you can special summon Cyber Dragon from your hand or graveyard, and it cannot be destroyed by card effects. Since it specifically says Cyber Dragon, if there is any of your Cyber Dragon monsters whose name is Cyber Dragon in your graveyard, you can reborn them with Cyber Revsystem. So that's very, very good to run 1 copy in this deck. Cyberload Fusion, I remember I could not wait for this thing to be reprinted in Leisure Duel Season 2. I'm really happy with this card because it really enables some pretty good OTKs if you're putting it hand in hand with your Overload Fusion. Cyberload Fusion is a quick play spell card. You can fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your X deck to list a Cyber Dragon as material by shoving the fusion materials list on it into the deck from among your cards on the field, and /or face up banish cards. Which is really, really great. But you want to make sure that you're very careful with this, and most of the time you're going to activate in your battle phase, because for the rest of the turn you cannot make attacks with monsters except for the one that was brought out with this card right here. So 1 copy of Cyberload Fusion, very, very good for the build. 1 copy of Cyberdark Realm. Cyberdark Realm is the way that we are able to search our Cyberdark Chimera and add it to your hand, and as soon as you do that, you're able to normal summon it as an additional normal summon to, say, your core or whatever. And of course, we already know the craziness that Cyberdark Chimera can be, so 1 copy of Cyberdark Realm is very, very good, because you just core, normal summon core, use core effect, search Cyberdark Realm, activate Cyberdark Realm, normal summon your Cyberdark Chimera, and then you're able to kind of pop off from there. Now this can be controversial considering that you want to also use your XZs in this build, but I also find running 3 copies of Fusion Deployment can be very, very good if we're kind of going down the Fusion OTK route of this deck. So Fusion Deployment, you reveal 1 Fusion monster from your extra deck and special summon from your hand or deck 1 Fusion material whose name is specifically listed on that card. So of course we run Cyber End Dragon and Cyber Twin Dragon, so it's no problem like special summoning a Cyber Dragon from the deck. We want to bring out guys to the field as much as possible because we really want to OTK with this deck. So Fusion Deployment I find to be very, very good. If you run it at less than 3 copies, that's absolutely fine. I've seen this in a lot of builds at 3 and I like the idea, so I put it into this build myself. Speaking of fun shit that you need to be careful with, 3 copies of Clockwork Night. Clockwork Night is very, very good. It really helps get the OTKs because not only does it increase our monster's attack by 500, it also decreases your opponent's monster's attack and defense by 500 as well. Not only that, it's also turning them all into machines. So it's great to kind of like wipe your opponent's board if you're able to contact fuse into your Chimeratech Fortress Dragon. One thing I will say that you need to be very careful with a Clockwork Night is the fact that it increases our monster's attack by 500. Now, that, of course, that's always pretty good, unless if you're running Machine Duplication, which we do in this build. We run 2 copies of Machine Duplication. What Machine Duplication says, you target one machine monster you control with 500 or less attack, and special summon 2 monsters from your deck with the same name as that face-up monster. Now, the reason why this can be problematic is if we already have Clockwork Night up and we normal summon our core or whatever, core goes up to 900 attack and we can't Machine Duplication core from there. So if you're in a situation where you have Machine Duplication and have Clockwork Night, make sure you Machine Duplication first before you go into your Clockwork Night shenanigans. But definitely 3 copies of Clockwork Night and 2 copies of Machine Duplication I find to be very good and very fun for this deck. 1 copy of Power Bond, I used to run 2, but since we have the Chimera package now, it's searchable, so only 1 copy of Power Bond is more than enough for this build. 2 Overload Fusion I find to be very good. It just fusion stones 1 dark machine fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials Lyna from your field and or graveyard. So yep, that's just a really good way, and it goes hand in hand with Cyberload Fusion. It's great to bring out our really good monsters. Definitely run out 2 copies in this deck. 1 copy of Call by the Grave. This is a combo heavy deck, so we don't want to be interrupted. 1 copy of Raigeki. It's a good board wipe, and I find it to be very good. Because what we do is we special summon our Cyber Dragon out first. Since Cyber Dragon doesn't start a chain, we're able to Raigeki from there, which is no problem at all. And also 1 copy of Harpie's Feather Duster. If you want to switch this out with the 2 copies of the newly semi-limited Lightning Storm, that's fine. I just find that these can work kind of a little bit better if you're kind of in the late game. The reason why I don't really like Lightning Storm for this build is that, first of all, Lightning Storm destroys only all of your opponent's attack position monsters. And also the fact that you cannot activate Lightning Storm if you already have a card in the field. So if you're like mid-game and you draw Lightning Storm, it's already a brick. And also the fact that since Lightning Storm is the first card you need to activate in order to get it to actually work at all, if you destroy all of your opponent's monsters, like say they didn't have any in defense, your opponent doesn't control a monster for you to special summon your Cyber Dragon. So I find 1 copy of Raigeki and 1 Harpie's Feather Duster to be a lot better than the 2 Lightning Storm. Finally, rounding off the deck, we run 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Of course, much like Ash Blossom, just a very versatile hand trap. I definitely recommend, if you could run it in every deck, you definitely should. It's just a really good hand trap. Good monster negate, you can't go wrong with it. Before we go into like the big heavy fusion monsters build, I'm just going to quickly go over the 3 linked monsters we run in this deck. 1 copy of All Mirage. All Mirage can be good protection for your monsters. He's easy to bring out if you're just normal summoning a monster with 1000 or less attack, which almost all of our normal summons are. So 1 copy of All Mirage will be very good. 1 copy of Lyna, the Light Charmer. Lyna can be great because pretty much most of her monsters in the deck are light, and if you're going against a deck that leans heavily into light monsters, Lyna can be great for kind of stealing them from the graveyard. And of course, since it's a Cyber Dragon deck, 1 copy of Cyber Dragon Seeger. Seeger can be great because it goes hand in hand with your Chimeratech Rampage Dragon in order to go for an OTK. And Seeger is kind of like good protection and good way to boost up your other Cyber Dragon monsters in order to get OTKs. So 1 copy of Seeger as well. Little XZ's package, literally 5 cards, which is still a third of the extra deck, but whatever. We run 2 copies of Cyber Dragon Nova. He can be brought out with 2 level 5 machine type monsters, which of course either your Galaxy Soldier or your Cyber Dragon himself. He has a good effect that you can actually detach 1 material from this card, then target 1 Cyber Dragon in your graveyard and special summon it. Please make sure that you have a Cyber Dragon in your graveyard before you activate that, because you're able to detach a Cyber Dragon that's attached to him if you already have 1 in the graveyard. Detach that Cyber Dragon and then you can bring out that Cyber Dragon just attached, but make sure you have a target before you activate that. But 2 copies of Nova is very good, mostly because Nova is an easy way to overlay into your Infinities, which you run 2 copies of in this deck. Infinity is an amazing card against 200 attack for each material attached to it. He can suck up your opponent's attack position monsters, which is really good. And also he's a great Omni Negate. Once per turn, he's a quick effect Omni Negate by detaching 1 material, and if you negate the activation, you can destroy it as well. So Infinity is very, very good. Of course, it's essential for this deck. And also Zeus, because if we're kind of going into a late game, we kind of want to wipe the field as well. Zeus is a good way to overlay over your Infinity, and depending on how many materials Infinity has, i.e. like sucking up your opponent's monster, you're able to get a good few materials in Zeus to really take advantage of his not once per chain effects. So Zeus, very, very good for this build. Now let's round things off with the fusion monsters. Since we run 3 copies of Clockwork Night, which turns all of our opponent's monsters into machine monsters, 2 copies of Chimeratech Force Dragon is very, very good. All he takes is 1 Cyber Dragon and 1 or more machine type monsters on the field. You don't bring them out using polymerization or power bond or anything like that. It's just you need to send the monsters on the field to the graveyard in order to bring them out. And we can do that because it's machine monsters on either side of the field, and Clockwork Night turns all of our opponent's monsters into machine monsters. So if your opponent has a full board of, let's say, like 5 monsters, and you're able to special summon Cyber Dragon with Clockwork Night, you can pretty much contact fuse all of that stuff on the field to get this guy up to a ridiculous amount of attack, because he gains 1000 attack based on the amount of material that was used for his fusion summon. And also, he still gets an extra low boost because Clockwork Night will boost him up by an extra 500. Speaking of great contact fusing, since there's a lot of broken links out there, Chimeratech Megafleet Dragon is really, really good to kind of just contact fuse away some of your opponent's like towers that they have in the extra monster zone. Because Chimeratech Megafleet Dragon, he takes 1 Cyber Dragon monster and 1+ monsters in the extra monster zone. So it's a great way to contact fuse your opponent's problematic monster in the extra monster zone, and he gains 1200 attack for each material used for his fusion summon. So it's very, very good to run 1 copy of him. If you can find a room to boost him up to 2, I even would, because honestly, it's very, very good if you can just contact fuse your opponent's monsters away. Contact fuse is a good way that they can't really interfere with it. So Chimeratech Megafleet is very, very good for the build. Now the OTK enabler, 2 copies of Chimeratech Rampage Dragon. He takes 2+ Cyber Dragon monsters in order to bring him out. When he's brought out, depending on the amount of material used for his summon, you can pop that many spells or traps on the field. And also he has another effect that you can dump 2 other monsters from your deck to the graveyard, and he can make that many additional attacks per turn. So you're able to dump 2 Cyber Dragon monsters from your deck to the graveyard, make this guy attack 3 times. He is kind of small with the fact that he's only 2100 attack, but you're able to boost him up with Seeger to enable great OTKs. 2 copies of Chimeratech Rampage Dragon, very, very good. Speaking of OTK enablers, if you're placing this with Power Bond, Cyber Twin Dragon is great, just takes 2 Cyber Dragons in order to bring them out. 2800 attack, but with Power Bond it brings up to 56, and this card can attack twice during each battle phase. And finally, rounding off this deck, 1 copy of Cyber End Dragon. Again, this deck is just for fun. I love Cyber End Dragon. I find it really funny whenever we're able to bring him out, especially with Power Bond, so we just get the true feeling of being Zane Truesdale. Cyber End Dragon, probably one of my favorite cards from GX. I definitely recommend running out 1. If you want to swap it out for a little better a better extra deck monster, that's no problem at all. I know there's a Chaos Synchro monster that some people like to play in this build now because it's kind of easy enough to bring out, but Cyber End Dragon always has a special place in my heart for me, so I like to run it in every Cyber Dragon build I make. So 1 copy of Cyber End Dragon I find to be very, very good and very fun for this deck. So that does it for the profile. Please let me know what you think. Of course, this deck is mostly just for fun, so don't expect any side deck or anything from here. This is purely fun, nice little build. You can use this as a good skeleton if you're going for your own Cyber Dragon builds. Please let me know what you think or any suggestions. Please let me know, even comment down your deck list for your more competitive Cyber Dragon builds. I'd love to hear them and take suggestions. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and please check out the other content on the channel. And of course, as always, there's more on the way. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.